structuring ethics. Is ethics a thing anymore? A lot of times, it really is a big deal. When you're in a business relationship with somebody, knowing who you're working with, making certain that when you look them in the eye and they tell you something, and then you can trust what they're saying is a big deal. One time I was in negotiations, and I had the union president and I had his negotiating team, and there's 10 of them and there were 3 of us, and so we're going back and forth and we're talking and everything else, and we had drawn up a series of rules. One of the rules that we had agreed to, both sides agreed to, and we actually wrote it down and had it on a piece of paper on the wall, a big sheet of paper, and we had 7 different rules we were following. One of them was we wouldn't sit down and leave the negotiating room and go tell other people outside of the room about positive or negative aspects of the team. It ended up that I heard that the union president had said bad things about my team, and so the next meeting, I called him on it. I said, you know what? You agreed to these rules. And in the process of agreeing to them, I kept my side of the bargain, but you didn't. I said, just so you know, I want to make certain that we're all in agreement with these rules. Let's go over them again. Okay, now, do you agree with this one? Yes. I said, so what'll happen if we do that? Let me tell you, if you don't keep your word on this, I'll tell the whole world you didn't keep your word. A pin could drop. The reality, though, is if you have ethics and you talk about them, you need to sit down and support them. What are ethics on the individual basis? They're really the things that we hold and guide our behavior, and they're unique to each and every single person. It could be a whole series of things: honesty, integrity, responsibility, respect for others. I have several different things that I have. One, probably the biggest thing is I believe that everybody should be treated with dignity and respect. And you know what? I don't even look on the outside. I'm looking at, are you a person or not? That's my sole criteria. And I pay attention to them because of the fact that they are a unique individual. There's only one of them on planet Earth, and I need to sit down and respect who they are. With me also, you might notice that honesty is a big deal. When I give my word to somebody, I want to make certain I do all I possibly can to honor what I said. If I don't, and something has come up and I can't go back and do that, then I go back to that person and tell them, here's the situation that I have and this is why I can't do this. These are things that we have. These are things that shape me as an individual. You will have your own set of moral principles. And you know what? They may be quite different. Sometimes the principles come from who we are as an individual. They say that by the age of 10, 90% of our lifetime values are already established, and then by the time we're 20, they're locked in 100% for the same things we're going to have our entire life. That includes everything from our perspective on the world to the kind of music we have. You're going to find out that between the age of 10 and 20, the music you heard and you liked the best, you're going to like that probably your entire life because that's what you learned, and those are the things. And no, it's not a value. It's a cultural aspect of it. Our culture, however you were raised, will tend to be the one that is the correct one. This is my culture. You need to go past that and pay attention to other people's cultures because they weren't raised the same way as you were. They didn't have the same culture, so listen to them. And if you do, in my opinion, you'll be a better person. Corporation ethics are guided from the top down. There's a code of conduct for the company which guides decision making at all levels, but here's a simple truth. You can talk all you want to, yap. You can print all the things you want. Our company believes in the following things for our corporation. These are our ethics. Except for the fact, here's a simple truth. If the CEO of the company demands that everybody's punctual, but the CEO is never punctual, then it doesn't matter what you have in writing. People will follow the actions of the people that are out there. And then, if they get punished for it, they'll just be able to point back and say, well, I learned it from them. Ethics in a corporation are top down, not bottom up. And it doesn't matter what's on a paper. If it's on paper and the CEO and the leadership follow what's on paper, then that is much better than that piece of paper. People watch the leaders, and corporate ethics are top down. We talk about defining ethics. Let's talk about the different approaches that we have and how we can do that. Here's the approach of different aspects. I went online and I sat there and asked a couple AIs, what are the 6 most common workplace behaviors considered misconduct? Theft or fraud? Yes! Bring out the water board, deal with them in the process. Harassment. Now, harassment is huge. Conflict of interest. But the problem is you have a lot of that even in Washington, D.C. I'm going to pass a bill on this over here, but I'll buy stock over here. You have that aspect. Doesn't matter what party it is that you have. You also have that with different employers in the aspect of, I'm going to go with this. I had a college president once. And he was relatively new, and surprisingly, he sat down. He was staying in somebody's condo rent-free, but wait, that person actually had a software package valued at $1.2 million. He was trying to buy it for his college. Is that a conflict of interest? Yes, it was. He moved out of the condo and we used a different vendor. Okay, but he got caught, and that's the reason why. Not because of his high moral character. Abusive behavior. Bullying is getting to be so big. The only problem with bullying is that some people, I've actually had this happen. My boss told me what to do. That's what bosses do! I didn't say it that way. I was much nicer saying, okay, but were you doing your job? Okay, was what the boss telling you to do, was it germane to your job? Let's look in your job description. Oh, you're supposed to be doing that. Yeah, but he shouldn't have been like that. Okay, he wants you. You need to do your job. Okay, but sometimes it's the way that you do it. Violation of company policy. Sometimes there's rules out there, people ignore them. That's a big issue. And then insubordination, we're seeing that more and more on a regular basis out there. So then it went the most common inappropriate behaviors. Now this, I'm not certain how you can write somebody up for this, but this aggressiveness, physical aggression, bullying, assaulting a coworker. You know, one time I had, this is the real story. One time I had a maintenance worker, and he was just kind of an odd duck, and he felt backed into a corner for some reason mentally. He literally down. You ever been in those dark tunnels sometimes underneath buildings, just like a horror movie? He was hiding in the side tunnel, and he had a giant monkey wrench, and he jumped out and he knocked over another employee, and he was beating him. He slobbered on his cheek. He had the wrench raised up, and the guy thought he was going to die at that moment. It really happened that way. We had to fire him, and it was one of the most tragic things because nobody saw it coming. At least that's what the supervisor said. Other people did say that. Aggressiveness is out there. I'm not certain you can have somebody push nonstop. Sometimes aggressiveness is a good thing in certain business situations, but that certainly was just about as bad as it gets. Gossiping. I don't know if you could write somebody on a disciplinary basis for gossiping, but frankly, gossips are poison to an organization. And to be honest about it, you need to sit down. If you're a boss, you need to nip that in the bud on a regular basis. If somebody's doing that, especially if they're telling mistruths or not telling the whole truth, bring them into the office and have that dialogue with them. And if you have to, write them up. That thing can sit down there and damage the morale of any organization. Absenteeism, I got to tell you, if you're in business for a while, you'll notice there's some people that always miss a Friday or they miss a Monday. Those are issues that you have, trying to work it out, but make certain that people are there and you follow through on that. Narcissism, that ended up being in the top 6 over here. This is becoming a bigger problem, self-centered behavior, but you know what? This class is really all about me. I am the professor. That being said, well, actually, it's kind of about you. But I know that because of the fact that you're here in this class, and my goal is to help you get those 2 deliverables, the academic side and also knowledge for the future. But people that are full of themselves, they really have the self-centered behavior, and they'll do things to sit down there and make sure they're there. Passiveness, a lack of engagement or initiative, sexual harassment, this is actually a big deal. Be careful about that topic. We'll talk more about all these later on. But ethics and values, if you start looking at the different types of ethical misconduct in the workplace, look at the conflict of interest, how often it happens, 27% of the time, abusive behaviors, the violation of health and safety, corruption, discrimination, they're out there. There's 4 approaches to ethics, and philosophically, they're really good, but I want to talk a little bit more about the concept here as to how the practical application goes into the workplace. The utilitarian approach, for the greater good, okay, sometimes it's been abused, but a lot of times it makes an awful lot of sense. The individual approach, approaching ethics from your self-interest, okay, that which will help others. Well, the individual approach, it depends where you're at. A lot of us really have an approach where we want to sit down and help other people in the process as well. the moral rights. There's fundamental rights shared by everybody. That's kind of like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's kind of like a popular thing here in the United States. Justice, respecting impartial standards of fairness. We even have a law, really the type about proper financial record for public companies called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. That's something that from a legal perspective you have to pay attention to, especially if you're involved in a C Corp in the process as well, or a common corporation. So the two ways to write ethics. One is compliance-based. You do this or bad things will happen to you. And sometimes you actually have a list of the bad things. The other type is the integrity-based code of ethics, where you sit down and have, we believe that here is the following things that we have. Now, frankly, I normally have both of them in there, and I put both of them into memos where somebody violated the ethical code. The code says this, and you failed to follow it on the following thing. And they put the dates right in the memo. And when you're going into formal discipline, you have to include that. I think these are two methodologies. They have to have full support from the top of the organization, because remember, they really come top down. Here's Hershey's Code of Ethics. I really like it. It's simple and it's pretty straightforward. Our commitment to consumers, commitment to the marketplace, and so on. You know what? I think it's a sweet code of ethics, and you might say that Hershey is always kissing up. Take a Hershey's kissing up. All right. Anyway, so that being said, structure and ethics, it's top down, and pay attention to compliance versus integrity. Those really are the ways we actually have ethics in organizations, and we all have values, but sometimes we never have sat down and identified them by name as to what they are. I encourage you to do that, because if you're going to base your life upon a value, you need to know what it is and make certain that you really do comply with that aspect, and your life will be better because you know what you believe in. Take care.